Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Braden, Tim, Second Legacy. You are here on a momentous day because, oh my gosh, Tim, SCOTUS just struck down Chevron deference.
Amazing.
Holy crap. Like, to give you guys some backstory on this, we're going to dive right into this because it broke while we were filming another video. We had it pulled up and it got updated as we were filming, and it took everything in my body not to scream while we were filming that other video. So, guys, this broke 3 minutes ago as of the filming of this morning. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on and send this one out. Because, Tim, we don't even need our humor and sarcasm on this one. Just pure joy.
Just good news. Now, granted, we don't know, we don't really understand quite yet how this is going to be implemented or what this is going to mean for existing regulations, right? But based upon everything we're reading right now, it's looking pretty brutal for those that have been misusing Chevrons and the Chevron deference in these agencies. And just quickly, so you guys understand what Chevron is, because I made a post on X when this broke, and I said Chevron's been tossed out by the Supreme Court, and people are saying elaborate. So very simply put, Chevron means Congress passes a law. Many times there are holes in that law. Questions arise as to like what Congress's intent may have been when they wrote the law, but the law doesn't directly address this particular point. So then they said in the 1980s, we'll just give it to the governing agency and let the agency fill in those holes. It was called Chevron deference. They'll defer to the agency and let the agency fill in the holes. But that has been abused. So this whole concept started in the 80s. It's been going on until present. And agencies like ATF and other agencies, EPA, FAA, FCC, all of them have been doing this, where they just make up laws out of whole cloth. Example, you take a look at the brace issue right now. For 10 years, ATF held that was not a stock, that it was a brace, and it was perfectly legal for you to put on your firearms. 10 years later, after an administration change and a new appointment is made at the ATF's leadership table, and boom, you know what? Changed our mind. Chevron deference, folks. It's now a stock, and if you have one, you're going to prison. Okay, this is the gross misuse of Chevron that the Supreme Court has finally decided to hear. Now, they didn't hear it on the brace issue. It was about fishermen and fines and fees levied against them by these agencies. Yeah, but it affects all things.
Herring is what brought the ETF down, dude. A herring case. Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude, I am over the moon. Now, as Tim, I think it's really important to say this. We don't know all the details. We don't know all the fallout. This happened 11 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So for where we are on this right now, let me just read a few things to you, Tim. If I have permission, I think that would be something to add some context.
Okay. Saying.
All right. Well, first, before I get to the media, because they're freaking out. All right. A flurry of articles is hitting right now. So this is actually from the decision. This is the portion from this is the Loper Bright Enterprises. So here's the actual decision as was held. The Administrative Procedure Act requires courts to exercise their independent judgment in deciding whether an agency has acted within its statutory authority, and courts may not defer to an agency interpretation of the law simply because a statute is ambiguous. Chevron is overruled.
Right.
That's insanely important. I mean, as Tim said, ATF, all of them.
So in the case of the ATF, we're going to talk about this in the scope of ATF, right, and their misuse of Chevron power. So this addresses that perfectly. What it's saying is, in the past, if an agency like ATF said, you know what, a brace is now a stock and you're going to prison, you're going to pay a $1,000 fine, whatever, right, whatever punishment they deal out to you, they're saying that no longer can the courts refer to the agency's interpretation of the law, right? So before, you would go to prison because ATF said, well, you know what, this is now a punishable offense. We changed our mind, you're going to prison. Now, it's what the Supreme Court is saying, the courts don't have to follow that. Now, whether or not they're going to if they're going to say the courts, if they do follow the regulatory decisions of these agencies, if they're going to pull that away from them, I don't know. We just don't know what the scope of this is. Does this mean that all the existing rule changes that have occurred across all these different agencies, are they all suddenly tossed out? That's going to throw the federal government into chaos. Well, I mean, we don't really know what the implication is here just yet. All we know is they're saying, agencies, you've been abusing your authority, and we're taking that away from you. Now, does that mean the agencies will be able to abuse the authority? That it'll be up to the courts to take it away later, whatever they've done, or to fix it? We don't know just yet. Right.
We'll see. We'll see. But here's a few of the media articles to give you an idea of how they're feeling about this. Guys, okay, I'm just going to, just as they show up in the Google feed, for SCOTUS rules on Chevron, okay? Supreme Court overrules Chevron doctrine, imperiling an array of federal rules. Supreme Court sledgehammer to federal agency power in Chevron case. Supreme Court overrules Chevron, kneecapping federal regulators. Supreme Court weakens regulators, overturns Chevron deference. Supreme Court's conservative bloc overturns Chevron, curbing agency power. Guys, they are initial reactions. They're not happy. They're not happy about this at all.
How the left has been trying to govern for the last couple of decades, right? They have relied on the agencies. They can't get things done in Congress, so they do what they've done with ATF. They go to these regulatory agencies when there's a power change in D.C., and they say, hey, look, we can't get anything done in Congress, but you have the power to reinterpret laws Congress has already passed. And they've done so with great, shall we say, they've done it in such a way that they've really pushed the boundaries of what's acceptable. And that's why the Supreme Court has gotten involved, because they've gotten so brazen. It's insanity. And so, it's crazy to see it, because I didn't really think that they could do this, because this has been going on for 30 plus years, almost 40 years. It seems like this could really unravel the underpinnings of our current government and how it's currently operating. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. It truly is, because it certainly sounds bad for the government and for all these leftist organizations that are abusing Chevron.
It's so, man, I mean, I don't, you know me, I don't have a loss for words very often, but with the actual Chevron system or ruling coming down like this, stacking on top of the Bruin decision and then stacking on top of the Cargill decision, I would just like to really spend a second, Tim. We have said consistently on our channel through the last year and a half, 2 years that we've been doing it, the Supreme Court does not take 2A cases frequently. They simply do not. They're like every 10 to 15 years.
Maybe.
We have had, we have had, since the Heller decision, and I think that was in 2008. That's the year, right? It was 8. It wasn't 05.
It was during Obama's administration, I believe. Yep.
Yeah. So you have the Heller decision in 08. Then that stacks with McDonald. It wasn't Miller. Miller was before that. McDonald, 2 years later. Then you had the Bruin decision come out in 2022, which wrecked federal regulation on ATF, on firearm regulations. Then you shortly had, after that, the Cargill case. Then after that, you now have Chevron deference. Guys, that's 5 cases in 15 years. That is highly unusual.
But keeping in mind, Chevron was all about fishermen and fishing, like a $700 fee or something they would have to pay.
Of course.
Which is kind of interesting.
And Cargill wasn't about guns.
Right. But then you go back to, take a look at what happened at the Bundy Ranch. Do you remember what that all kicked off over? It was over the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management.
Bureau of Land Management.
Imposing taxes, if you will, without the act of Congress. Just saying, you know what? If you want to graze your cattle on public lands, you're going to have to pay $1,000 a head. Oh, you know what? Next year, we're going to make it $2,000 a head. This is the very reason why we even exist as a nation, folks. It was that type of behavior by the the Crown imposing taxes on the people without a Congress, without representation. That's the reason we went to war, to free ourselves from the tyranny of the Crown. And they're literally doing again through these bureaucracies and these agencies. That's what happened with the Bundy Ranch. That's what happened with these fishermen. And that is why the SCOTUS stepped in. And it does affect us with ATF and gun rights as well. So, yeah.
It absolutely does. Guys, man, I mean, Tim, I told you earlier when it first came down, I was shaking when I was reading this. Because I cannot believe, I was actually my head a rush of adrenaline. Because do you guys understand what this means? When you're stacking this, when you're stacking the Bruin decision, when you're stacking the Cargill decision, guys, it's hard to truly express how bad this is for the executive bureaucratic overreach of the ATF and the DOJ against our gun rights. It is genuinely hard to express. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a maybe we might have won. This is a massive.
To put it in perspective, taking it back to braces, right? So you have braces where ATF for 10 years held that braces were not stocks. You could legally buy them and put them on your firearms. Every major manufacturer out there was selling guns with braces on it. And then 10 years later, after Biden comes to power, oops, you know what? Changed our mind. It's now a felony. You're going to prison. That has been undone. Okay. So when the brace thing goes to court the next time, because it's been vacated right now, but I'm sure ATF is going to appeal. Maybe this will change that outcome. But if it goes before the court again, this helps us, because what ATF is trying to do, they're doing it through the abuse of Chevron. So, and this is a classic case of Chevron abuse. So this really helps us in so many different ways. It truly does.
This is so massive, guys. If you thought there were a lot of lawsuits popping off after the Bruin decision, you've seen nothing, because the Bruin decision was specifically 2A related. History, text, and tradition was what they hit. Guys, this decision against Chevron deference applies across every area of our political sphere, every area of regulation, every area of our lives. This is not just 2A specific. 2A is going to have a field day because they use it to infringe upon the 2A rights, but everything else is going to get sued too. I mean, Tim, I can't even think of an area that would not have been affected. To your point, 40 years of regulations.
Think about the EPA just coming out and saying, you know what, by 2035, all gas engines have to be done. That was not an act of Congress, folks. That's an agency making up laws out of whole cloth that have a dramatic effect on your personal life, your economic life. And that's the type of abuse that this puts to bed.
Absolutely fantastic, phenomenal. I can't wait to read this opinion. Make sure you guys stay tuned because we've got so much to dive into. God, Tim, I mean,
we're going to need some more, analysis coming from legal minds. It would be great to have the armed attorneys on again, but
that's actually a good idea. I'll reach out to them.
See if they want to have a conversation about it and what it means from a legal aspect, because they could definitely fill in some of that, those areas that we don't quite understand because we're not of legal minds. But it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. Watch the news, folks, and we'll be back with more commentary once we learn more. Again, this is breaking within the last half hour. This took place, and so we're just kind of following along as it unravels, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. And we'll fill you guys in when we learn more. Thanks for watching Second Legacy, and we'll talk to you guys soon.